Hello everyone, welcome to ITLS Academy. This is your mentor Dr. Shamaita Basu, and in this session we will be talking about the last session of the module of forensic technology, that is trace evidence in the real crime laboratory. So this topic basically covers mostly those topics which I have talked about in bits and pieces in the previous sessions and different other in different separate sessions and topics. So I will keep this session short and I will cover this in only one session. Okay. So let's begin. So what do you actually mean by trace evidence? So it is physical evidence which is found in small amounts at a crime scene. Common examples will be hair fibers, paint chips, hair strands, fiber, paint chips, body fluids, stains, powders, explosive residue, glass particles, vegetative matter, metal particles, and soil. It may also include more unusual types of evidence. So what can be the different unusual types of evidence? So I have given two figures also over here. So it can be a torn piece of paper, it can be itching powder, it can be ashes, it can be a spider as you can see over here, it can be a matchstick, it can be grease, and it can be linoleum. Okay, so when we are talking about trace evidence in crime laboratory, a very important person which we need to refer to as is Edmund Locard. I have given his image also over here. So again, the same thing, that whenever you are learning about a new topic, you need to have a basic idea about who actually initiated the topic or who actually came up with the topic. Okay, so in this case, in the case of trace evidence in a crime laboratory, the person who came up with the topic is Edmund Locard in the year 1910. So he came up with a principle or a theory which states that every contact leaves a trace. Okay, so I think again this is something that I have referred to in the previous sessions of this module of forensic technologies. So anyways, so what this proverb, that is every contact leaves a trace, what this proverb actually means is the value of trace or contact forensic evidence, which was first recognized by this person named Edmund Locard in the year 1910. So he was basically the director of the very first crime laboratory in existence, which is located in Lyon in France. So it means that whenever there is a contact, it can be in the form of the suspect, it can be in the form of the suspected criminal, or in the form of the victim also, there will be some trace that will be left behind, no matter how clever or how professional that particular criminal is. Okay. uh, so the principle basically states that with contact between two items, there will be an exchange. So again, this is something I've talked about earlier, that whenever there will be some sort of physical contact between the victim and the criminal, because in any crime scenario, in any crime spot, any crime scene, there has to be two persons involved, isn't it? Then only it will become a crime scene. So now it might happen that the two persons, maybe they were not present at the same point of time in the same place. Maybe the criminal came a bit early, he or she set up the entire scenario and then left, and then the victim actually came and got arrested or got victim to that particular scene which was prepared by the criminal a while ago. But again, there will be some amount of trace, there will be some amount of evidence that will be left behind. For example, burglars will leave traces of their presence behind and will also take traces with them. They may leave hairs from their body or fibers from their clothing behind, and they may take carpet fibers away with them. Okay, and also fingerprint will be a huge source of evidence collection in case of forensic. I have talked about in details about fingerprints. Okay, so these will be some of the examples. Now talking about in details about the different evidence examples. So the first example that we will talk about will be that of paint. Okay, now paint can be in various forms, as I have given different figures. As you can see, it can be paint transfer on a car, it can be paint layers, it can be physical match of paint chip edges. Okay, physical match means where, so for example, you have got two tone pieces of a paint chip, and then you are saying that the two pieces are exactly actually aligning with each other. That means those belong to the same single paint chip. Okay, so talking about paint as an evidence example, So there is a just GK general knowledge or did you know fact that I've given over here, that is most paint evidence submitted to a lab will come from hit and run cases involving automobiles, means basically RTA. Okay. So physical and chemical analysis of paint evidence in the form of chips or residue can indicate its class, such as automobile paint, house paint or nail polish. The evidence, so how will we understand that the paint is of what category? By physical and chemical analysis. Okay, the evidence can be compared to 40,000 different types of paint classified in a database, which can be used to identify a particular make or model of car or brand of tool. Paint evidence can also indicate individual characteristics if an investigator is able to find similarities between two samples, such as the color, number of layers, chemical composition, or a physical match between the edges of two paint chips, one from a tool and one from a crime scene. So individual characteristics can also be identified if the investigator is very much, experienced and like efficient. Okay. Second evidence that we can get in the form of trace evidence in crime laboratory will be glass. Again, I have given images, so it can be a magnified image of a glass fragment. It can be the different pattern of cracks in the glass that can occur due to any kind of accident, RTA or hit and run case. Okay, as in this diagram I have given, it's showing the different patterns of cracks in a windshield fracture, which can reveal information about the speed, occupant, and also the angle at which the glass had been shattered. Okay, so glass particles can be found at various crime scenes such as breaking and entering, hit and run, vandalism or murder. Glass at a crime scene is analyzed to determine its color, surface characteristics, tint, thickness, density, chemical composition and refractive index. So these are the different factors that we need to analyze if we get glass as the evidence. Okay. The results of the tests will provide clues about the crime and help the investigators connect the evidence to a suspect or other object used in a crime, such as matching glass from a crime scene to a headlight to a suspect's car. So these are the different things that we can actually get our results from if the crime investigators and the forensic investigators get the perfect clues. Okay. Third example of trace evidence that we get is that of explosives. Very important. Okay, so the explosive substances, they can be examined to determine its chemical composition, to identify the type of explosive used and its origin. So in order to know what type of explosive was used at the crime scene and also of its origin, from where it was procured, from where it was synthesized or manufactured, all these things can be known only after the proper chemical composition analysis of the explosive. Okay, so again you can see I have given different images of pipe bombs and chemical reaction bombs. Okay, RDX, etc. RDX I think is not here. Anyway, so the traces of explosive found on a suspect's clothing, skin, hair or other objects may be matched to explosives from the crime scene. So say for example, as a forensic investigator, you have got say for example a pipe bomb from the crime scenario, and then if you are matching it with the traces that you have obtained from the suspect's clothing or skin or any other object, then you can actually go for mismatch and contact matching. Okay, so materials used to make an explosive device will be compared to evidence found in the suspect's possession to confirm a match. And then after matching that, okay, this explosive was only used to kill the victim, you need to also make sure, or you need to also prove that this particular explosive was actually the explosive that was used by the criminal, isn't it? So for that, you now need to compare the explosive with whatever evidence was found in the possession of the suspected criminal. Okay. Next important important evidence that can be considered as a trace evidence will be the ballistics. Okay, and ballistics is again something I've talked about in details in the previous sessions when I was talking about firearms and tool marks. Okay, So again, I have given a nice GK fact, did you know fact over here. So see what they are saying. Caliber means handguns and rifles, or gauge means the shotguns, refer to the size of the internal diameter of a gun's barrel. So it will be directly proportional to the size of the internal diameter of the gun's barrel. Okay, so this is a nice GK fact. And in this figure, what they're showing, the the stretch marks or the striations, which are known as the striae. So investigators, the forensic investigators, can actually compare these striations on bullets to see if they match. So if it is matching the striations of a bullet which is found in the crime scene, if it's matching with the striations caused by the bullet, then that means that same bullet or that same ballistic was used in the crime scenario. Okay, and then again, accordingly, you have to go and prove that that gun was only possessed by the suspected criminal. So characteristics of ammunition, firearms and residue are examined to find matches between suspects and the evidence found at a crime scene. Chemical tests can reveal gunshot residue, which is again abbreviated as GSR. Again, gunshot residue is something I've talked about in details, on the hands, face or clothing of a victim or suspect to indicate how close a person was to a fired gun. So that is again a very important thing when as far as gunshot residue is concerned, to get an idea about what was the actual distance between the victim and the criminal or the suspected criminal when actually the bullet was shot. And another important investigation will be regarding the grooves of the rifling in a gun barrel, which causes distinctive grooves, indentations and scratches upon fired bullets, which can be matched to the weapon that fired them. Okay, so it was found, if it is found that the bullet has been fired from that particular fire gun only, that means again it's a match. So police are able to search the integrated ballistics identification system, that is EBS. Again, I have talked about EBS in the previous session. So it's basically a database to compare markings from bullets, cartridge cases and shotgun shells to ballistic evidence, because database is something which always helps. It reduces time, it reduces effort, it reduces the tediousness of the job, because database means you will be getting information about all the different fire guns or all the different types of ballistics that are available in the market. So you can basically sit at a place and match with whatever shotgun or whatever firearm you have obtained from the crime scene. So this EBS database or EBS software will be very much helpful as far as this ballistics evidence investigation is concerned. Okay. Next, coming to dust and dirt. Okay, so see, this is it somewhat looks like those small stone chips or marble kind of things which are occasionally found in the beaches, the the covered shells and all, but it's actually not. It's a microscopic image of sand. So this basically, these are the individual sand particles that are there. Okay, so it's a very fascinating and wonderful image that under the microscope the sand actually looks like this, like pebbles basically. So dust, dirt or sand evidence can reveal where a person has traveled and may be picked up at a crime scene or left behind, because in many cases what happens, the criminal performs the crime at a place and then just in order to in order to hide the evidence, in order to hide maybe the dead body, that person carries the dead body or whatever evidence is there from the crime scene to some other distant place, just in order to get away from caughting up. Okay, so in those cases, how will you actually trace that particular criminal, or how will you get to know that whether the crime actually took in that place only or in some place else? By investigating these evidences of dust and dirt. Okay, so if it's seen that maybe, say for example, the crime has occurred in a house or in a mansion, but there is some trace of sand or there is some trace of mud in the shoes or in the clothing of the criminal or of the victim, of the body of the victim maybe, so there will be a question mark that where actually the murder or the killing has occurred, in the house or in some jungle or in some beach. Okay, so that will again be a very important part, or that will be again a very important evidence as far as trace evidence is concerned. So investigators will examine the samples for chemical composition, pollen, plant material, and other organic matter to find links to a specific crime scene. Next important evidence will obviously be fingerprints. Again, something I've talked about in details in the previous sessions. I think fingerprint was the one of the first sessions that I talked about in the module of forensic technologies. So again, it's just a revision. What are the three basic patterns or three basic types of fingerprint patterns that are there? Arches, loops, and volts. So investigators will also identify the unique reach characteristics in a fingerprint that can be used to identify a suspect or victim. Okay, so reach pattern is again something very important. Okay, and again we have a nice database as far as fingerprint investigation or identification is concerned, just like EBs. So it is abbreviated as AFIS. It stands for Automated Fingerprint Identification System. So it is basically a database which is used by investigators at local, state and national levels to search for matches to fingerprints found at a crime scene. And next, coming to impression evidence. Okay, so impression evidence means just we have to gain, or we have to get our whatever interpretation or result just from a impression. Means we do not have the original material which has left behind the impression, but we only have the impression. Okay, so in that impression evidence, what we have shoe prints and tire tracks. So the image that I have given over here, obviously you can make out that it is that of a tire track. Okay, so impression evidence can be photographed, lifted with tape or cast with plaster to compare to a suspect's shoes or tires. Again, impression evidence is something that I have talked about in the previous sessions. Okay, like how to use this tape and cast to, you know, to take those impression evidences. Okay, so investigators will examine the evidence to identify the brand of shoe or tire based on its tread pattern and other physical features to provide leads in the case. Okay, because different types of shoes from different companies, from different brands, different patterns of shoes will be producing different types of impressions. Okay, so from there we can make out not only about what type of shoe the person was wearing, but also about the socio-economic background of that person, from where the person belonged to, isn't it? If say for example, if a person is belonging if the criminal or the victim, whatever, is belonging from a hilly station or hilly area, so it's quite obvious that the person will be wearing a covered shoe or a boots or a sports shoe, isn't it? So these are some of the findings that as forensic investigators we can find out from the impressions evidence. Shoes and tires will also show wear patterns after being used for a period of time, as well as other features like scratches, nicks and cuts, because you know, more wear and tear. Shoe is something which will be undergoing continuous wear and tear, because it is something which we wear in the fit, and we always, like, we are walking against the floor, isn't it, against the road. So there is continuous friction, there is continuous wear and tear. Shoes are the things which are damaged the most at the most fast rate. Okay, after wearing 2-3 days only, there will be some amount of scratch or some amount of discoloration in the shoe. Okay, so it can be easily matched or easily tallied with to match the evidence to specific items. For example, shoe prints can be matched to a suspect based on how the treads on the shoes that are worn down due to that person's walking style. Again, walking style is also a great evidence or a great investigating agent that can be there, because you know, walking style, ek to walking style it varies from person to person. Each and every person has his or her own unique walking style, and moreover, most persons or many persons have problems of flat foot, or maybe some arthritic problem, maybe some weight disbalance. Okay, maybe some prosthetics or implants can be there in the leg, which will be hampering the walking style of that person, or it will actually become unique to that person. Okay. Okay, so then another thing as part of impression evidence will be bite marks. Again, something I've talked about in details, bite marks and lip prints. Okay, so we have 32 teeth in humans, which is unique to age and wear. Sorry, not 32 teeth, 32 pairs of teeth, which is unique to age and wear. Impressions and photographs of bite marks left on a victim, assailant, or other object at a crime scene can often be matched to dental records, because again, bite mark can be unique depending on whether some kind of teeth job is done, some kind of implant, dental implant is there, or maybe chips are there. Okay. And then tool marks, again something I've talked about in details. So tiny nicks and chips from the edges of a tool as it is used, which can be used to identify matches between evidence and suspects. Tools may also pick up traces of blood or other substances that can be tested, or have fingerprints that can be lifted. So we can get fingerprint, we can get traces of blood or hair or nail from the tool mark, and also we can be able to identify by some specific dents or scratches which might occur as a result of application in the crime scene. Next will be fracture matches. Okay, so fracture matches, what will be there, as I've given over here. So say for example there's a piece of glass or there's a piece of substance which has fractured, and then we are seeing that each of the pieces can actually be matched up with each other, aligned with each other. So that means it belongs to that original unfractured piece. Okay. So when an object is broken, torn, or cut, two unique edges are formed which are referred to as fracture lines. These edges can become, it's exactly similar to fracture of bones. When say for example a bone has been fractured into several pieces, what is done? We do plaster or crepe bandage, or in many cases if it's some specific types of fracture they need OTs also. So in those cases they are just aligned with each other and then it's plastered. So after a point of time, automatically the fracture line is gone, because it just aligns with the broken pieces. They align together and form the intact bone, the original intact bone that was there. Okay. So these edges can be compared by the naked eye or with microscopes to see if they fit together, which indicates that they may have been part of the same object at one time. Investigators may compare the edges on pieces of tape, glass fragments, paint chips, pieces of a car from an accident, paper bag, etc. to find possible matches. So these are the various types of fragments that we can look for in order to find the different matches. Okay. Over here I have given also, it's an image of maybe a knife which has been broken. Okay, so maybe it was just shoved into someone's stomach or head with much force, and with that force this piece has just broken off. Okay. Next, coming to wounds. Okay, when wounds can be caused by knives, by scissors. Okay, so different images I've given over here. So wounds can often be matched to weapons or tool marks on the weapon, because specific wounds are specific to some weapons. Obviously you cannot make a similar kind of a wound with the help of a knife that you can make with the help of a scissor, isn't it? So it will vary. The characteristic of the wounds will also vary if the tool actually changes. Okay, so the tool mark will also change in that case. So investigators may also be able to determine the weapon size, shape, and length. Analysis of a wound may provide clues to a victim's injuries, characteristics of a suspect, means whether he was left-handed or right-handed, the height of that person, and positions of the victim and suspect at the time of the incident. And there are some question documents also, mainly the forged documents. Again, I've talked about in details about forgery in the previous sessions. Okay, so examiners will analyze a ransom note or other document to find clues to link it to a crime scene or a specific suspect. They will analyze the type of paper used, printing method or handwriting style, and type of ink. Other unique features such as watermarks on stationery or indentations made as someone wrote on a page in a notebook may also provide useful clues. And next, coming to insects. Okay, so insects can also be an important source of evidence, because after a certain point of time they actually go and infect or leave on the corpse. So flies, beetles, and other insects can provide useful clues about a corpse. Forensic entomologists use factors such as weather conditions, the location and condition of the body, and their knowledge of the life cycle of insects to help them estimate the postmortem interval, or the PMI. PMI is basically the short form of postmortem interval. It is the time between the death and the discovery of the body. Next, DNA. It can also be a very good trace evidence in the crime scenario, isn't it? So investigators can extract DNA from almost any tissue, including hair, fingernails, bones, teeth, and body fluids. The DNA is used to create a profile that can be compared to profiles from suspected victims, suspected criminals or victims. And again, there is a database for this. Very important, DNA के लिए database is must, I would say. So that stands for, it's named as CODIS, which stands for Combined DNA Index System. It is a database maintained by the FBI that is used to find matches to unknown DNA samples from a crime scene. And this is a typical figure of a electrophoresis sample that I've given over here. And also coming to skeletal remains. So forensic anthropologists analyze skeletal remains to determine 4 characteristics for a victim. What are they? Age, sex, race, and stature. Stature means the height and weight and the build up of the body. So sex will be determined by examining the pelvis, humerus, and femur. Age and stature will be determined by analyzing the development of the teeth, bone growth, and the length of specific bones such as the femur, because femur is the longest bone of the body. So in this figure, see, I have just given the important, labelings like the jawline, the European mandible. These are some of the characteristic features for identification. Okay, race will be determined by analyzing the skull for characteristics that are common among people of different races. And the DNA samples can be collected from bone, teeth, and hair to provide clues to a person's identity. Scientists may also be able to gain clues as to a person's past, recent injuries, or the cause of death based on bone fractures and other signs of trauma. Now, what do actually the forensic anthropologists do? Anthropologists means their main role is studying the skulls or studying the skeletal remains. So generally the forensic anthropologists do not do any of the following. What are they? Collect trace evidence, means hairs or fibers, run DNA tests, analyze ballistics or weapon evidence, analyze blood spatter, or conduct autopsies. So what they actually do in order to help a forensic case, they go to a crime scene to assist in the collection of human remains, cleans up the bones so that they may be looked at, analyzes the skeletal remains to establish the profile of the individual. They will be required only when the body is discovered at such a later period that it has turned into a skeleton. Only then the help of this forensic anthropologist will be required. Okay, looks at trauma evident on the bones to establish the pathway of a bullet or the number of stab wounds. This is also a scenario when the forensic anthropologist will be required. But I think instead of forensic anthropologist, ortho specialists will also be able to do this job. Okay, studying the trauma or the injuries on the bones, isn't it? Works with the forensic odontologist, dentist to match dental records, and testifies in court about the identity of the individual or the injuries that might be evident in the skeleton. And also body fluids will be an important example of trace evidence. So body fluids, for example, obviously blood, semen, saliva, also sweat and urine, they can be analyzed to give investigators information about the crime as well as its victim or the suspect. Chemicals and ultraviolet light can be used at a crime scene to find body fluid evidence. Areas with potential evidence are swabbed, bagged, and collected in vials which are airtight and have a low risk of cross-contamination. So whenever you are collecting any type of sample, specifically body fluid, you must be very careful that there should not be any type of leakage. The container in which you are collecting it, it should be totally sealed and airtight, and also any type of contamination should be prevented. And also the person who is collecting should be wearing masks and gloves and proper lab coats. So examples will be vomit and urine, which can be used to test for alcohol, drugs, and poisons. Cigarette butts, which may contain dried saliva. Semen, which may contain sperm, which is valuable for DNA analysis. Blood can provide DNA evidence, and blood spatter can provide clues about the crime. And last but not the least, trace evidence will be hairs and fibers. I think something I've already talked about. So the image that I've given over here is basically a microscopic image of hair fibers. So they may be transferred from the suspect or the suspect's clothes to the victims and vice versa. For example, a suspect may pick up carpet fibers on his shoes or leave hairs behind at a crime scene. Hair can be examined to identify their origin, such as human or animal. Hairs with roots intact can be tested for DNA. So for DNA testing, we need hair strands which is having the proper root. If the root is not there, then DNA match will be difficult to be done. Okay, fibers are used to make clothing, carpeting, furniture, beds and blankets. They may be natural fibers from plants or animals, or synthetic fibers which are man-made. Okay, so I think that's it about trace evidence in the real crime laboratory. So with this, we finish with the module of forensic technologies. We will be soon coming up with the next module. Till then, thank you and goodbye. Please like, share and subscribe ITLS Academy. Thank you.